Welcome to A Better Now. My name is Jason Mann. I'm with Jim Check and Nikki Check, and we are streaming from the podcast lounge at KelownaNow.com, high atop the Landmark 6, and live on YouTube, X, and LinkedIn. And today's show, an update on the city's plan to borrow funds for upgrading new recreational facilities throughout the city. And part two of our show will welcome Annika Betts, Territory Manager of Andrew Peller and Board Member of Tourism Kelowna and the Chamber of Commerce, and maybe a couple other things. But first off, a quick look at the news headlines here at KelownaNow.com. A proposed skyscraper on the site of the old RCMP building stirs the waters as the city of Kelowna responds to a developer's lawsuit over revoked permits. Were payments made to sway public opinion? Dive into the details and discover what's at stake for the city's skyline. And the UBCO women's soccer team celebrates a program first, securing their spot in the conference quarterfinal. But as they rise, the men's team faces challenges against the nation's best. So what led to the women's historic success, and how did the men's team fare against the nation's best? We're going to dive into the highs and lows of UBCO soccer weekend. And for all those stories and more, visit KelownaNow.com. Should mention the city's controversial plan for the city to borrow nearly $250 million to upgrade parks through the AAP process is now complete. City ratified things, I guess, today moving forward. They did receive over 4,000 submissions opposed, but it does mean that over 96...
That was a third of what they needed to get, though. They needed 12,000.
That's right. And something like 96% of the city in favor by not stepping forward and raising an issue with it. So that is moving forward.
I would say all the little kids could vote.
I guess. So those are the things happening in around the city, and we have another guest in today. Nikki, you've invited a friend of yours to join us around the table and have a conversation today. Annika Betts, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So Annika has agreed to join us in studio today to just chat with us. I'm very fascinated with the sector that she represents, the volunteer work that she does, and really interested in just the headwinds, and there's a few
Just a couple.
that are facing the industry, and so very interested in that. And then loving that you'd said off camera a few minutes ago, Annika's opinion. So
Yeah.
you have a few, and we can't wait to hear, especially with
gosh.
the operations with Gone West Wine and the pivot there. So yeah.
So maybe just explain what it is that you do kind of on a daily basis.
Sure. So I am very integrated in the wine scene. So I'm very fortunate that I do have a full-time job working with Andrew Peller. So my job is the on-premise territory manager. So fancy way really of just saying that I'm a sales rep. But I work specifically with restaurants within the Okanagan, so Kamloops down to Osoyoos, representing our different brands that we have under our umbrella, and working with restaurant owners or managers to be able to get our products on their wine list. So that I would say is a good chunk of my time.
And so Andrew Peller, so
yes.
that is Mission Hill Winery.
No.
Nope.
So
No?
that's Mark Anthony.
Mark Anthony,
Yes.
see?
Yes.
I wouldn't have known.
The
right?
other gentleman. So, Andrew Peller has Grey Monk,
Grey Monk.
Sandhill, Red Rooster, Tinhorn Creek, and Black Hills
There you go.
as part of their portfolio. And that's just their BC winery. So we also have a full Ontario side of the business as well.
Good to know.
Yeah, I will say I've been really fortunate with the company. I started working with them in Ontario about 12 years ago. And then when my husband and I made the decision to move to Kelowna, an opportunity opened up. And so, again, I've just been very lucky to be able to move up within the company. And I've been really fortunate with my experience with them. So I love them. So I can't say anything bad. But the other side of what I do is I have my own business as well. So it's called Gone West Wine Club. It is a pivot project, as Nikki mentioned, to a business that my business partner and I had started originally called Red Lips and Wine Sips. So that one was predominantly doing in-home wine tasting parties for in-home celebrations, be it anniversaries, businesses, doing like corporate events, birthday parties, girls' nights in, what have you. But my business partner, Tanya, and I are very passionate about what the Okanagan has to offer. And we have so many really great small to medium-sized wineries that just don't necessarily have the means to be able to get their names out there. And so this was our way of being able to bring the Okanagan into people's homes, taste through 4 to 6 different wines, and then let people just enjoy their night after we were finished our tasting. Unfortunately, as COVID hit, that meant that we needed to do a little bit of a pivot. And so a wine club was always part of our intention and part of our business goals as we continue to build and succeed, but it just kind of pushed that idea a little bit quicker. So in 2021, we made that full switch and switched it into Gone West Wine Club. So now we're a third-party wine club operator, featuring different wineries on an every other month basis. Again, still small to medium size from throughout the Okanagan, and then just slowly building up the database for that one.
So you no longer do the in-home parties?
We still do.
You still do?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So we still offer it, and we get the bookings every once in a while. We love that part because it really gives us that ability to educate. That was the one thing that Tanya and I were really passionate about, is making sure that we had the wine education that we need to be able to share with other people. So we both have completed our WSET 3 wine education. So we like to say that we know what we're talking about. But we've also had the ability to work in the industry for a long time too. So not only can we back up the education, we have that experience under our belt as well.
So when Nikki talked to me about bringing you in, there's a couple headwinds that the tourism industry and has really faced with COVID through 2020 through 2022, and then fires, and then like travel bans and all that stuff. Like how, like you're
washing out roadways.
Yeah.
Washing out
Oh my
roadways.
gosh, this summer's been
Transportation.
interesting. Yeah.
You sell to restaurants as well. That's when you're. How what's the health of the restaurant industry right now?
Okay, so this is where we say this is an Annika opinion.
Well, for sure, it's your opinion. It's just because obviously we know you're not like doing all the stats. But.
Yeah, no, I would say it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's okay. Restaurants, I think anybody that wasn't going to come out of COVID has already shut their doors, be it here in the Okanagan or across Canada, or across the world, really. But the rising costs don't help
Inflation is
anybody's cause, that's for sure. The travel, now that we are capable of traveling, people are definitely looking outside of BC and the Okanagan to be able to go elsewhere. So like the number of people that I saw going to Europe this year, pretty intense. Whereas in the past 2 years, they probably would have come here instead, right? Especially with that message of like travel within BC borders being so prominent in the last couple of years. So it's okay. It could always be better though. Yeah.
Are you guys tracking sales though? Like, are you seeing sales? I know that consumption of alcohol went up during COVID when people are kind of in their homes. But did that translate after things opened up, where sales kind of like less home sales and more back to the restaurants kind of thing? Or
yeah, so once things started to open up a little bit more, the liquor stores definitely saw a bit of a dip, and then the restaurants, of course, were booming, right? Last year was just definitely a lot.
Record.
Yes, people were able to go out. They were hosting corporate events again. Christmas parties were able to happen. Whereas now, I think we're starting to see a little bit of a soften. So the challenge, and I know Nikki and I were chatting about this the other day actually, is that for the past 3 years, we don't have proper sales to be able to really compare against. So in 2020, you're comparing against 2019, which was a regular year, and 2020, everything was closed, right? So you really didn't have any sales. 2021, things were starting to open up a little bit, but it obviously was going to be better compared to a year where you were fully shut down. 2022, you're now comparing to a year where things have started to, or again, kind of open up a little bit. But in 2022 was when the restrictions were lifting, right? So then that's when everybody was going crazy. So now in 2023, we're trying to compare against a year where people finally had the ability to go out and have fun and celebrate and have more than 6 people at your table. And so it doesn't align properly. You can't really compare year over year. So sometimes people are looking at things like from 2019 because that would probably be our best baseline. But even then, still not quite there. Yeah.
That's amazing. Like we've got like a 4-year gap kind of where we don't have real numbers, because I know when they do numbers on Bloomberg and then when they talk about inflation and jobs numbers, I'm just like, you can really play with stats, right? Like you can really mess, like, it's 100% increase in jobs. To what though, right?
Yes.
Like, to a place where everybody was locked in their house. Do you know what I mean? So the numbers, stats can be really misleading depending on how you portray them. Right?
Yeah.
But
and what information you want to include in that sentence of what that stat was. Yeah.
How are the supply chain constraints, inflation that cause, like what's the cost to the consumer, like the end effect on the price of wine? Have we seen a dramatic jump or?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the type of winery that you're looking at. So from a smaller producer, their costs are going to be a little bit higher in comparison to maybe somebody that has the ability to bulk buy, for example. That being said, though, costs have gone up regardless of which way you're purchasing. And so at some point that needs to also be evaluated and considered when they're setting a price point. So you have seen some wineries over the past couple of years starting to take some price increases, some bigger jumps than others. This year, surprisingly, we've had a handful of wineries actually close down recently. And so because I don't want to say it's because their financial situation, because it's not. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the winter freeze that we had has affected the amount of grapes that they're able to harvest, and then their production is now going to be quite low. So coming off of 2 to 3 years where your visitation has been down, that's definitely money lost as well. And now you're coming into a year where you're not even able to make your full amount of wine that you normally would, then that's definitely going to make a bit of a hindrance on how much revenue you're able to make, right? So all of these little things just kind of have compiled. And so now it's gotten to a point where people are really needing to look at things in terms of like, what is our cost of good here? And are we having the appropriate margins that you need to have to be able to be successful?
Do wineries buy the same insurance that, say, cherry growers buy when on their crops freezing then? Is that available to them?
I would assume, but I don't know for sure. I think it would be not necessarily... If the winery has vineyards that they own, I would assume that they have that ability of that same type of insurance. But unfortunately, I'm not well versed on that side of the business.
What do you see going forward then, like with what's happened, and where do you see the path forward? Like, I think there's the ones that are left. I think wineries, restaurants, and all that stuff should get stronger with a little bit of less competition, I guess you would say.
Yes and no. So I would say it depends on the type of experience that you're giving people, right? If you only had pubs, then you're all competing for the exact same type of consumer, right? So we do have quite a diverse amount of restaurants within Kelowna specifically, which is kind of nice. From a wine list perspective, the restaurants are going to need to be a little bit more creative. So the nice thing about the Okanagan is, aside from the fact that we have amazing wineries here, is that everybody wants to support the Okanagan. So there's a lot of restaurants here in town that will only have an Okanagan wine list. The challenge is that with wineries being anywhere between 40 to 60% down in production, they're going to have to make decisions in terms of where their product is going. So first and foremost, a winery is always going to protect the estate. So at least I would hope so. So the estate would be your tasting room, your online sales, as well as any wine clubs that you have at your winery. From there, you would then venture out. So the next biggest buyer, if you have it listed, would be the LDB. So you would want to try to protect that. And then outside of that, you have LRS, which is licensed retail supplier or stores, as well as licensees, which would be the restaurants. So if you are already having such limited production and you need to make these decisions, liquor stores as well as restaurants are going to be the first place that people pull away from so that they're able to protect the estate. So there's already been some wineries that have said, there's only going to be X number of suppliers that are going to be carrying our product. Or if you want to make sure that you're getting your wine that you really love, make sure you join our wine club. And then that way you will have that ability to get it. So if the restaurants are now part of this chopping block, so to speak, in terms of being able to have access to these wines that they normally would carry, you now all of a sudden have less producers that you're able to choose from. So that would mean, in my, again, thoughts and opinions, is they're going to have to start outsourcing a little bit more. So that could mean a couple different things. One, you start looking into different imports and bring in more things from California, France, anywhere else that the world produces. Or you could just expand your boundary a little bit more and start including things like wines from down in Lower Mainland. We have the Fraser Valley, we have Vancouver Island, all producing wine as well, and weren't affected by the winter freeze like we were here in Kelowna, or in the Okanagan, I should say. And they're doing okay. They have the supply.
Is the winter freeze a long-term effect for us? Like, are these now replants potentially, or will the vines come back?
Some are replants for sure, and then there's others where it wouldn't produce for this year, but we might be okay for next year. So it's quite varied. Grapes that were severely affected were Syrah and Malbec. So those would be two wines that are going to be a little bit harder to find. I would say more so in a couple of years, because reds end up staying in barrel for a little bit, provided you're oaking. So those usually have a delayed effect, but nonetheless, it is going to be challenging.
You mentioned in your pecking order the estate and then like online sales. From 2019 to now, online sales must have grown. Are they holding that gain, or are they kind of leveling off? Or?
I would say that they're leveling off.
Yeah, but there was a tremendous gain, I imagine.
Yeah, so at the time, in 2020, I was the estate manager at Sandhill Winery, and my job, although wasn't necessarily to be very involved in the day-to-day operations, I ended up being very involved in the day-to-day operations. The tasting room was shut down. I wasn't capable of really doing much marketing, obviously I had to adjust, but my days along with my team members was packing up orders from the time that I got there to the time that I left. So a solid 8 hours of packing boxes and wine orders and just sending pallets out of orders that people were wanting to get.
And where can BC wineries now sell their wines? Can they sell them everywhere?
Legally?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Well, I guess it depends. Do you mean like interprovincial or across border?
Sure,
where are we saying? Okay.
All of British Columbia, obviously, that's easy, right?
Yeah, so all of British Columbia, you can definitely ship your wines to. The
interprovincial speakeasy, though, is where?
This is where it gets a little bit challenging sometimes, too. So
is that what they're going to put in the pipelines?
Maybe. Imagine if it was a wine pipeline. I would be so for Oh my gosh. No. So federally, so we actually are working off of a lot of very old school rules in terms of being able to ship wine across borders. So provincially, yes. Yeah. So federally, the government said, yes, feel free to do it that you can send it, but it's at the discretion of each province. So although federally, they have said, yes, you can ship across Canada, each province now has the ability to say, yes, I want to accept it, or no, I don't. So legally, BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and I feel like there's probably a maritime province or so in there, have all said, yes, no problem, ship your wine back and forth. Alberta, bit of a gray area. Never said yes, never really said no.
Somebody
depends on the day.
I mean, half the people are here from Alberta.
I know. Ontario would prefer to not accept BC wine being competitive. Yeah. That being said, a lot of wineries are still doing it, right? So,
do you have names?
I don't know. Come see me later. I will not say anything official online. But yeah, so it depends. And there are wineries that will truly not ship into Ontario, because they're just worried about the ramifications.
Right.
But
that makes sense.
Then some other places have just been like, well, if you're going to go after me, you now need to go after this person, this person, this person, this person, this person. And it's a long list,
Sounds
right?
like it's just red tape and...
Yes, yeah, pretty much.
Maybe time to open up provincial borders.
Yeah, you would think.
Do you have any insights on what the industry is doing, or Andrew Peller is doing, in terms of innovation or technology to protect against things like wildfires and frosts and all the crazy climate stuff?
Yeah, I don't. It would actually be very interesting to learn more about it, just to see that you're kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature, though, right? So as much as you try to plan, I don't know if you can really do too much. But there are organizations out there that are constantly researching and looking into things. I would say that I would assume that the Summerland Research Center would be one of those places that is really trying to like dig their heels in. Climate change is not that I really want to get into that full debate, but I think it's pretty safe to say that it is a thing. And so we are seeing more winemakers start to be a little bit more aware and acknowledge the fact that the way that we have been doing things aren't the way that we can continue to go if we want to continue to see a successful wine industry here in the Okanagan. And so that could just be the simplest thing of just making sure that whatever grape you have planted is the best one for that vineyard. Because as we continue to get warmer, which we are, there are going to be certain varietals that we just might not be able to produce any longer. Or it just takes a very different flavor profile because it's now grown in a warmer climate compared to what a cooler climate would be.
So, Annika, can I ask something on that? And I'm pretty wine illiterate, but I do see Marcus Friend posting on Facebook that he's cleared hectares and hectares and hectares of land in the Vernon or North region. Would that be due to the ability for these varietals to grow in that space
so
now due to weather?
Yeah, so originally you would think that Vernon would be too cold to be able to grow anything, which is why you really don't see any vineyards there. But as the weather continues to get warmer, then that just means that you can, right? Which I guess is good because that's like I feel like we're kind of running out of space here. Unless we wanted to start tearing down more of our orchards, which I don't think we want to do because we still have quite a successful farming and healthy farming industry. We're going to need to start sourcing other areas. Land is starting to get very expensive as well between here and down to Soyuz. So you're just going to have to start looking at other ways to be able to plant or areas to be able to plant, and then again making sure that what you have there is going to continue to ripen and do well.
The Okanagan's known for golf, skiing, wineries, the lake, but now a lot of breweries. How was the breweries kind of like taking away the younger audience? I'm just saying, is it taking away some of the younger audience from the wineries that they would expect?
I think it depends. So
there's a lot of breweries now.
There is a lot of breweries. So where Santal is located, being in downtown Kelowna, I would say that, and I can only say it just because I did work there, and this was kind of the debate and the brainstorming sessions that I would have is like, how do you encourage somebody that is a beer lover to come into a winery? So chances are, if you have a couple that are going out together, like my husband and I, for example, I am the wino, he is into beer. So an area like that works out really well for us because I have the ability to go for a wine tasting, and then he can also do a beer tasting if he wants, which he usually does. So in situations like that, it does work out really well. But that just means that you always kind of have to have be a little step quicker than everybody else and try to figure out how are you going to market to these beer people to entice them to come into the winery. And
what's the first winery to open up a brewery inside the winery?
I don't believe we have
Killer idea.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Just mows on down the bar there.
Yeah.
There you go. I know that for some people, it seems to be cheaper too, like breweries for like the younger audience, if they're money conscious, they definitely, I think, lean to beer because they get a lot taller glass.
Yes.
They get more, and it's cheaper.
But I think there's a stereotype that's trying to be broken in wine being, maybe, correct me, snooty or snobby.
Oh, for sure it was.
Whereas beer is a little bit more laid
back.
It is definitely.
No.
Some.
I try not to be. It depends on the day and what you've poured for me. No, I think, and that's kind of one of mine and Tanya's goals with Gone West and with our in-home wine tastings that we're doing is just to really break it down to people. You don't need to know a lot about wine to enjoy it. At the end of the day, do you like it or not? And if you don't, fine. What was it that you didn't like about it, so that you know when you're trying something else to not go for those specific types of characteristics that you would find in the wine. If you do like it, again, amazing. Why? And then you know, okay, I really love a peach and lemon flavor in a wine. Well, what other types of varietals have those types of tasting characteristics for you to be able to enjoy as well? The other thing with wine is it is a and this sounds funny, and I was kind of laughing about this with Tanya yesterday too. Like, wine is plant-based, so you only have one harvest that you're able to make product out of, and once it's gone, right? So the volatility within wine is much bigger in comparison to beer, where you're constantly making it throughout the year. So once somebody's run out of a keg or a product, or they're getting low, they know that they have X number of days to be able to make their next batch, basically, right?
Almost identical.
But they have stolen ideas from the winery, because when I was younger, beer was just, it was like, there was like Pilsner or some stout, and now there's like raspberry and orange.
Oh my gosh, so many different options.
Yes.
I can't drink any of that stuff because it tastes like beer to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, the young people just go crazy for it.
Okay, that's not fair, young people. All walks of life drink beer.
Raspberry beer,
like
that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I know. I will taste it to try to like learn and enjoy it, but if I'm going somewhere, it is not the first thing that I'm reaching for. That's for sure.
We don't want to keep you too long. I'll have one last question for you. I'm sure everybody else has some other questions. If you have a favorite wine, and I imagine you maybe have several favorite wines that you have.
You might not
this
be
is
able
so
to
not
answer
fair.
that.
No, but I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be the winery, but just like a Chardonnay or like.
We're not very wine savvy.
No, that's okay. So I am a Riesling fanatic. I have loved Rieslings. I don't like the like super sweet style. So this is part of the reason why I love Riesling so much. It is so versatile. So you can make it in so many different ways. You could have it as a super dry, highly acidic, which is like the style that I like, all the way up to make it as an ice wine. You can have it as a sparkling wine. Like it's so versatile, and absolutely love it. So the majority of the wine on our wine rack on any given day usually is Riesling. But I love everything, with the exception of Merlot. I cannot get behind Merlot.
And
I have tried so hard.
Is that kind of like a swamp water?
No, there's no such thing as swamp water in wine.
When you just go to the restaurant and you get like a 7-Up.
Hey, the Europeans mix like red wine
call
with
it a
Coke,
Meritage.
and I don't know.
Red wine and Coke?
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I haven't tried it yet, but the first time I used to serve forever back in the day, and the first time one of my tables asked me for a side of Coke with their wine, and I'm like, why? What is happening? Oh gosh. No, but everything, it's also unique and different, and so like I'm very hard pressed to find something that I don't really like.
My favorite wine is ice wine. Probably because
you like
so
the sweet stuff, eh? Yeah.
Chocolate ice wine.
Yes, so good. Yeah, and it's like ice wine's kind of nice too because you can use it in various ways.
Ice cream topping.
Okay, which I've never understood why people would want to do that, because you're easily spending at least $70 on this bottle of wine, up to over 100. Like, why would you pour it on wine? But the nice thing about ice wine, just to throw some education in there, once it's open, because the sugar content is so high, it can last longer than a regular bottle of wine, right? So you can hold on to it for about like 2 weeks versus 4 days of something regular. But you can also turn it into cocktails, add some vodka to it, and you have a martini, add some sparkling wine into it, and it's just like a nice way to be able to like offset that sweetness.
A lot of people don't know, like if you buy a bottle of wine from the liquor store, say it's a $20, $25, or $30 bottle, how long will it last in your home, and how should you store it, and where should you store it?
So generally you would want to store it in a like cool climate area. So if you have, not that everybody has cellars, but if if you are lucky enough, that's always kind of good. So somewhere where you're not like fluctuating in temperature and light, that's kind of the main thing that you want to make sure of. If it has a cork, you want to make sure that it stays on its side so that the cork doesn't dry out, because at that point air can get in, and then that's just going to cause your wine to oxidize and then age it faster and then kind of hit its peak faster. In terms of how long you can age a wine, it really just depends on what the wine is. So if you're picking up a bottle of like Pinot Gris, where it was made in 100% stainless steel, that's something that you want to drink a little kind of light and fresh and new. So you would want to enjoy it within the first year of it being released. If you're picking up a bottle like, I don't know, a premium red from a winery that had like a little bit more time in barrel, those are made to age so you could hold on to them for a little bit longer. Again, just kind of depends. But if you have any wines where you're wondering about it, you shoot me a little email and I'll say, get rid, drink now.
I think we have some in our cupboard that are maybe years old.
We're going to get rid of those.
Yeah.
I won't even
Those would be
email
Christmas gifts, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
No.
Wine is always good to gift. Just depends on what the wine
For
is.
Nick and Marcy back there.
Lucky people.
Annika, thank you so much for coming in
thank you
and
for
sharing
having me.
with us. That was wonderful to have you.
Yeah, it was great.
And thanks for all the updates on everything going on in the industry.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, join us tomorrow for Good Morning Kelowna and the latest headlines and the forecast to get your day off to a good start. Until then, just have a look at our YouTube channel and our TikTok channels. Like and subscribe them if you are enjoying the content here. And of course, our newsletter, if you want to stay in the know, at KelownaNow.com. And until then, keep striving for a better you. Have a great night.